Well, folks, the Warriors are down 3-1 against the Nuggets. They resume the series Wednesday at Chase Center. But right now, I can't imagine a better guest lineup. Two Hall of Famers. Hall of Fame head coach George Karl, who coached the Warriors in addition to winning his NBA Coach of the Year award with the Denver Nuggets, and my great friend, Hall of Famer Rick Barry. They're joining me next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On. You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Warriors, your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you can find podcasts. You can follow Hall of Fame former head coach and former George Karl on Twitter at Coach Karl22, and you can follow Hall of Famer Rick Barry on Twitter at Rick24Barry. Gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I'm just at a loss of words. I will not speak much. I'm just going to throw questions, and you take over. First things first, give a recap of this Warriors-Nuggets series, 4 games. Your insights, what you think about Game 4 especially. I'll start with you, sir.
With me?
Yeah, George.
I'm very impressed with the Golden State Warriors. I think they have total control of the series. The first 2 games, I don't know what confidence Denver had going into the series because they've had an up and down year. But I just thought the first 2 games were they just took all the energy out of Denver. Denver came back and played well. In Game 4, could have won Game 3 if they executed better down the stretch. But, when it comes down to the last 2 or 3 minutes, I mean, Denver's been pretty good at that, but Golden State's been pretty good at that too. And you could argue that yesterday, if Draymond Green doesn't foul out, that Golden State could have swept them. But I think Denver's a little bit less skilled than Golden State. Golden State is getting its confidence. It's growing. Their momentum is seemingly in a very positive place. That is where I think Denver's psyche and momentum is a little bit on the negative side.
Rick, your thoughts, sir?
Well, to be honest with you, I was kind of shocked to see them play the way they played in game number 4. Their defense was nowhere near as good as it was in the other games. They gave up 120-something points. I don't think they got Poole involved the way they needed to. He didn't get enough shots. I just don't think that they played the same way. And you and I talked about it a little bit, Cyrus. That small lineup that was so effective against them didn't play together all that much in game number 4, and I don't understand that. And even with all of that, I agree 100% with George that if Draymond doesn't foul out, I think they could have won because they came back. They got the lead. They had a chance to win the game. And, how many times are you going to see Steph Curry miss 4 free throws in a game? I mean, my God, it's like a minor miracle that happened. So, but give credit to Denver. Denver had pride. They didn't want to get swept. They did a nice job, but the Warriors had it in their grasp and they let it slip away. But I just don't think they played anywhere near as well in Game 4 as they had played in the previous games. And I got to throw something out there, George, before we continue on with this.
Please.
Somebody knew you were coming on the show. They saw it. They sent me something. It was a clip of you playing ball with the San Antonio Spurs, and you had long, flowing hair, knocking in some jump shots. Who the hell is that guy?
Yeah. I wore my hair pretty long in those days, but I had hair then. I don't have hair anymore.
I know. It was so funny to see you.
I was just having a discussion with a buddy of mine with a different show. Like, my hair is going, man. I'm doing some work here to make it look like it looks okay. I'm gonna buzz this thing at some point. At what age did it go from the flowing, beautiful locks to like, damn it, I gotta start cutting this thing short? Like what's the age range there where you have to start giving up? Sadly.
It starts losing. I started losing it around 30.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then I started coaching, and it went really fast. So I think if I could have stayed playing, I would have kept it a little longer. But I think once I went into coaching, I lost my hair a lot.
Gentlemen, and George, it's such a pleasure to have you on. Congrats, by the way, on the induction into the Hall of Fame. The formal ceremonies will take place soon. I'm sure Rick will be there. But as a former coach, and Rick as a former legendary player, and you're a coach yourself, this is the question that bugs me. Why do you think Steve Kerr only played Gary Payton II 7 minutes, actually less than that? And then Bielitsa, who's actually playing important minutes as a big man, he spaces the floor because he's a three-point threat. He got under 5 minutes playing time. What goes into that? In your opinion, like, I didn't hear anyone directly ask Kerr about this. Like, in your opinion, how does that work with the minutes when it's working so great? You're up 3-0, and then for some reason, unexplainably, the minutes go down for these types of players.
Well, I think anytime role players you're talking about, it's at the coach's his choice in the middle of a game sometimes affected is what goes on in the game. I'm not sure he wanted to play Gary Payton that short of minutes, or the big guy that short of minutes. But because of the foul trouble that Thompson got into, and they had substantial foul trouble. Other guys had some foul trouble along the way. I think he might have changed course and managed the game maybe differently. I didn't think they lost anything in Game 4, other than, as Rick said, they need to get their defensive intensity up a little bit. They missed more open threes than I've seen them in a while. I think Steph was 3 for 12, and a lot of his looks were wide open. And I don't think it's time to panic in any means. I think it's time to just go back home, get some rest, take care of business.
And I haven't. Rick, I'd love for you to go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with George's thing. I mean, you get a feel for it and see how things are going. But I just don't understand why I wouldn't have tried that small lineup more, because it was so darn effective. But the bottom line is you had 2 of your 3 3-point shooters have bad games for them, and they still almost won. I mean, so that's the thing you look at. I mean, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. I mean, 2 of the 3 guys had to have bad shooting games. Clay had a great shooting game from threes. And that's what you got to hope for. That's what Denver has to hope for, is they have to hope that 2 of the 3 guys are off on their games. But the big thing is going to come down, and it always comes down to, which I think George would agree with me, it comes down to your defensive intensity and your commitment to playing defense. You can't give up 126 points and expect to win games, especially on the road.
And I have George. I have your Twitter account. Yeah,
I think it's really interesting that a great offensive player is talking about defense. I've always been amazed how offensive players, when they retire, get defensive oriented, and defensive players, when they become coaches, usually like to coach the offensive end of the court. So
here's the thing. To me, first of all, they say defense wins championships. Yeah, defense helps you win championships, but you also have to put the ball in the freaking basket. But you have to be a consistent defensive team to make the other team work hard in order to get baskets, not give them a lot of easy looks, not give them a lot of easy baskets. And it all comes down to a commitment and focus on defense. You're not going to win a championship unless you play some good defense. The redeeming quality to me, George, about the NBA is that in all the years as a fan growing up, as a player playing, as a broadcaster, watching it again as a fan, no team has won that wasn't a good defensive team. And I think that shows you something, and that's where you have to put your focus.
I wholeheartedly agree. And in just a moment, I got to give some love to a longtime sponsor of this program, Athletic Greens, and their product AG1, which is incredibly healthy for you. But I want to remind people, and I'll remind people numerous times during this show, you can follow George Karl on Twitter at Coach Karl22. You can also check out his website, which includes his podcast, all sorts of fantastic media ventures. And I really love the way your channel is set up, Coach, just because you've categorized the different shows depending on themes. And that's truthplusmedia.com is the website. And I really feel like you two get along just because you're both so focused on the truth, which I respect tremendously. And I think you both agree that just some people can't handle it, right? Is that a fair assessment for both of you? Am I off base there?
I think our country's in trouble in that area, to be honest with you. We're now lying on national TV on a daily basis. And that bothers me. I mean, this country. I mean, I think we all. I think Rick probably grew up. You all probably grew up with the. You can't tell a lie. The George Washington cutting down the apple tree and can't tell a lie. But it seems like our world today, with artificial information and all the crap that we have out there, we spin more things and we fabricate more things. We embellish more things, and unfortunately, I think truth is losing.
Oh yeah, Rick, what are your thoughts on that, real quick?
Yeah, don't get me started on this about politics and the way that they. Please don't ruin
just
my
information.
day.
Just information.
I mean, if we would
just
just tell the freaking truth. Don't use bias. Tell what happened. Here's the side. Here's both sides of it, and let people make up their own mind. Don't you try to influence somebody by what your bias is to convince them that what you're telling them is the truth, when they should be entitled to hear both sides of the story and make up their own mind. And I'll apologize because I'm at the U.S. Open pickleball tournaments. That's why you're hearing all this noise in the background.
Rick, I call that ambiance. And real quick, and look, there's anything that's true, it's that we got to be careful about what we put in our bodies. One of the longtime sponsors of this program, gentlemen, I'll be with you in just a minute. Thank you so much for putting up with the ad read here, is Athletic Greens, and more specifically, AG1. This is just a simple drink of water in the morning. You put a scoop of the AG1 in there. It's full of nutrients. It increases your acumen. It increases your digestive system. It increases your immune system where it's full of antibodies and antioxidants. That's really great for you. And it's really easy to find. It's really easy to buy. And they'll give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with the first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. George Karl, again, you can follow him on Twitter at Coach Karl22. You can follow Rick Barry on Twitter at Rick24Barry. So, Coach, it's interesting. People forget this, that you coached the Golden State Warriors from 1986 to 1988. You were on Rick Barry's show a couple years ago, and that was such a pleasure for me, certainly. And you expressed how I think an ownership change led to you being booted out, right? Wasn't Don Nelson closer friends with the new owner that came in? Am I accurate in saying that, sort of?
Oh, I think Don Nelson was very, very much got me the job. And then he got out of his job in Milwaukee and thought he wanted to get out of basketball. And then after a year or two of not being a coach, I think the ownership wanted him to coach more than me to coach. I mean, I had a very good relationship with Jim Fitzgerald, but I think deep down inside, Fitzy and Nelly were best friends. And I think that's what in the end they wanted. They wanted Nelly to coach the team.
That's fair, but you've ended up having a phenomenal career, 6th all-time in wins. You won the Coach of the Year award in 2013 with the Nuggets. You both live in Colorado. I believe, Coach, you're there on a more full-time basis. Rick, you split time between there and Florida, depending on weather. That's a fantastic retirement plan. Where does your allegiances lie? Do you have allegiances? I feel like you kind of favor the Nuggets, and I don't blame you if you do, but I'm just curious. Where does your heart lie in terms of organizations? I know the Sonics are true to your heart, but they don't exist right now, sadly, and we're all waiting for that expansion team. So is it safe to say right now the Nuggets are the team that you probably support the most?
Yeah, I'm over my anger, my frustration of being released here. That was, I don't know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I think the Nuggets have had a championship team for 5 years. I think right now I'm angry at not the team as much as I'm angry at management, because I don't think they've tried to make the moves necessary to give Jokic enough ability to win a championship. And they always like they always like to juggle with excuses. And I'm not a big fan of excuses. I think anytime you give players excuses, they're going to have a reason to come back at you with excuses. And the game doesn't work that way. You got to understand there's mistakes in the game. You got to play through them. You got to learn from them, and you got to get better because of them.
You're absolutely right. The Nuggets have, undoubtedly, he's going to be the two-time MVP here in moments. Nikola Jokic, when I say moments, it could be days away, but the Warriors implemented a weird strategy in Game 4. It's been effective putting Draymond Green on him, but for some reason at the start of the game, and I think anybody who understands basketball knows the Nuggets were going to do anything possible to avoid getting swept, and they did. But a huge part of that was Jokic being guarded by Kevon Looney, who has proven to be completely ineffective. So Kerr went through to a weird strategy of putting your former player coach Andre Igoudala on him, and Nikola just ate him alive. In your opinion, why did Kerr hesitate and wait until the second half to start playing Green on him? Who's really the only player that's effective. And what do you think the Warriors should do to defend Jokic, if anything?
Well, I think that Draymond Green matchup is something that I think Steve Kerr was trying to save his minutes for the fourth quarter. And it kind of worked out until he fouled out in the fourth quarter. But I think most of his decisions on Jokic is on Draymond's foul trouble. He wants to protect him as much as possible. And I think you're going to see Jokic be more aggressive when you have Iguodala on him. I think playing big on him. I mean, if I don't have Draymond on him, I'd probably put a big guy on him, Looney or the I can't pronounce the shooter's name, and then double team him. And then
Bielitsa,
yeah. And
hard name.
I think big is better on him in the post up. And I'll tell you what, people don't understand how good Jokic is down on the low block. I mean, the game of basketball doesn't allow a lot of low block basketball or post-up basketball because it's not as efficient as perimeter basketball. But in the same sense, Jokic can really score on almost anybody on the low block.
I feel like he's one of the most unstoppable players in the game. I've never seen any player effectively defend him, really. All you can do is slow down great players. Rick, what would you do? If you're still with us, there you go. There he is. What would you do, Rick? I mean, what do you think the Warriors are doing right and wrong in terms of the strategy defending Jokic? It seemed to be effective enough for the first game. The game 4, they failed.
I'm a big believer. Let Jokic get 40. Stay on him. Stay home. He creates so many opportunities for other people, even though he may be not getting 10, 12 assists, but he's creating all kinds of opportunities. Stay with him one-on-one, and then wait till late in the game. If you're close still in the ball game, then you go and send some doubles at him, and maybe he'll make a mistake or do something. But I don't think you want to leave and double team him because he's going to find the open person, just like he did for that big three-pointer that they made late in the game. They came and they doubled him. Hey, let him make that shot. I just don't believe in doubling a guy like that. Hey, if he scores 2 points, he scores 2 points. We can go down the other end if our team's playing well and score 3. So we still got one up on him. I think you should go ahead and have Draymond guard him. And Draymond has to also be smarter. You can't swipe at balls and do things that maybe you can get called for a foul. Just play good position. Don't try to block shots. If he makes his shots, he makes his shots. And plus, Jokic has not been shooting the threes well ever since March. So force him out. Back off of him, stay home on everybody else, and let him shoot some three-point shots. Not to the point that you give him totally uncontested, but just back off enough so he can't go and get by you. And if he does start to dribble in there, just play him one-on-one. That's the way I would do it. I think that they worry too much about him, and they create opportunities for his teammates. If Jokic gets 35 and the other guys aren't scoring a bunch of points or he gets 40, I think the Warriors will still beat him.
Yeah, that's fair. Coach, if you don't mind, you tweeted something interesting, and this has been, when it comes to curiosity, I think Dub Nation and the NBA world as a whole is very fascinated. And I'm going to share this tweet right here for the YouTube viewers, and if you're listening on the podcast, George, Coach, you tweeted this that said maybe the Nuggets should hire Mark Jackson for the next couple of weeks. He can then get Iguodala to share some intel on the Warriors. You haven't been shy about this. Can you elaborate on what happened back in the 2013 series where your team was the 3 seed? You were upset by the 6-seeded Warriors. You've come out before. You said this on the Rick Barry show as well, that you felt Andre Iguodala and Mark Jackson were communicating. Could you elaborate on what you think happened or what you know happened?
I personally don't. I mean, I've let it go. I just think it's a fun thing now. I think Iguodala was great. And the series that we're talking about when they beat us in 2013, Iguodala played really, really well in that series for me. But I did see the communication. I heard the stories. I heard the rumors. I've never really gone into it. It doesn't matter to me. I just think it's the negative vibe and energy. Sometimes it stimulates the BS of the game of basketball. I mean, we didn't play well enough to win that series. It wasn't anything to do with Mark Jackson and Igoudala. But the negative energy that was occurred in that scenario in our locker room created some negative energy that I wish wasn't there. But hell, I've been living in negative energy in locker rooms for a long time.
Well, could you provide specifics? And I promise we can move on from this subject if it's not something you're interested in talking about. I know the fans aren't, and Igoudala himself made comments of that. That's why I brought it up. And I'm just curious, like, were there specifics, or was it just the news stories combined with your personal perspective of how Igoudala was in the locker room?
I think it was all the knowledge of what I knew, what I saw on video, and how my players were reacting to it. It was a combination of everything. It wasn't just me and Andre. As I said, I thought Andre played really well for me in that series. And then afterwards, when you lose, everybody wants to blame and come up with complaints and bitch and moan and all that stuff. And I really don't usually do that. And it's 7 years later and we're still doing it. I kind of think it's kind of ridiculous.
That's very fair. And that's social media for you. People love the gab. Right. And again, I would not have brought this up, but Igoudala made a public comment about it. And I was like, whoa, I mean, it's still bothering him. So I was very curious from your perspective, what your thoughts were at that point. Rick, have you had your Built Bars yet? Rick, are you still with us?
Been out there that I'm going to get George. Yeah,
please.
I'm still. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
I'm here. So I'm going to throw this out for just thoughts on it. I'm a big believer. When they hire somebody, a general manager, an NBA team should be a general manager to be able to run the team from the office standpoint, but not personnel. I think what you should do is you should allow a coach to be able to be the one who decides who his players are going to be, because then if the team doesn't do well, it's all on him. Because otherwise the general manager goes and gives the coach chicken, and says, make chicken salad out of this. And then who gets fired? Freaking. So why do they have a general manager? No, the coach should be able to recognize talent, know who's going to be able to play the way he feels the team can play. Let it be on the coach. Then you have the coach to blame if the team does well, as opposed to blaming the coach when the general manager picks the freaking players.
That's
I
fair.
buy into that one. I'll sign that contract. I'll sign that contract. I've been saying for 20 years, I have been saying general managers and agents are the ones that sign all the contracts that mess up rosters. The free agent contracts, the decisions, taking the coach out of that decision, I think is crazy. I have no idea. And what I've been told now, there's very few coaches that have very, very little personnel decision making. I don't know. I know most of my time in my league, I had pretty good power or influence, but that doesn't exist anymore. And I actually think coaches feel the game and know their team better than anybody else. Now, that doesn't mean they make good decisions all the time, but I think they know their team as well as anybody in basketball. And it takes that intelligence, that knowledge of what's going on, and not put it in the boardroom that makes the decision to make a trade or pick someone in free agency without the coach's input. I think it's crazy.
That seems fair.
So I know that I got one person that agrees with me. Yeah, it's crazy.
I honestly believe, Rick and I have had a lot of gripes. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
I'm just saying, it just makes no freaking sense whatsoever to have these guys doing that. I mean, who's to say? Most teams make the worst freaking decisions as to who they get. I mean, this way the coach has his future on the line and he gets to pick his players. And if it doesn't work, now he is the guy that should get fired, and you bring somebody else in and try to make it work out. Now they can talk with the general manager and have converse about it and see what they think. I think the ultimate decision should lay on the coach, because he's the guy who's going to get fired if it doesn't work.
Is it safe to say that Frank Vogel got the short end of the stick with losing the job with LA?
I think he did.
I'm sure he had no choice in the personnel that were on that team.
He didn't have a choice in his own assistant coaches. That's the one that drives me crazy. You can't even hire your own assistants anymore.
Did that happen with you, Coach?
That never was I had a clause in my contract that management could veto my choice. But I never had a choice to say that I get to pick two and the management gets to pick two. That's like putting Benedict Arnold in your locker room.
That's true. That is a very great point. That's
no. Hey, that kind of stuff happens all the time. I act with the Nets. Butch Beard asked me to come with Clifford Ray and be an assistant coach with him. It's ownership. I mean, I was the Net, right? The Net ownership said he could not hire me, that he had to hire a coach with previous head coaching experience. I said, Butch, that should tell you, you want to be the captain of your own ship and have your own crew who's going to back you up. Them telling you that you need to get a coach who had previous head coaching experience means the moment things go south, you're gone.
Yep.
And you know who's going to replace you? That coach they made you hire.
That's incredible. By the way, it just occurred to me, Coach, you're going to be going into the Hall of Fame, I believe, with your former – oh, no, maybe he's not your former player. I was about to say Tim Hardaway, but he got drafted right after you, Coach, there, so never mind. But regardless, huge congrats on the Hall of Fame. That is – may I ask something that this is – your folks are both in or about to be in one of the most exclusive clubs in the world. What is induction night like? I was in a fraternity way back when, and for you folks who have judgment of fraternities, please don't judge me for that. I promise it did not affect my character in any regard. But nonetheless, it's an esoteric society, and initiation night has its own interesting rituals. Is there anything interesting about the Hall of Fame induction that we don't know about? Like, can you give us just leak something that happens behind the scenes? A little morsel.
Well, I haven't been inducted yet. You got to ask Rick first.
Rick, what can a coach expect when he's inducted? Rick, can you hear us?
I was on mute. You see a lot of people who you have great respect and admiration for, who have achieved great success in the game of basketball, and so it's always nice in that regard. There's a lot of people that go in there, so it's a pretty long evening. So you should try to keep your speech. They say you have a time limit, but everybody goes over the time limit when they talk. But it's it's certainly you're being honored by peers. Sometimes I wonder who was on some of these committees, because they changed the committees around. I've been on committees for Hall of Fame people, and sometimes I wonder what they're looking at. And it's always a subjective thing. People argue that so-and-so should have been in, or this guy should have been, or he didn't deserve to be in. The bottom line is, if you get voted and you're in, it's a great honor. Its name is all about. I mean, it's just a nice little thing. It's a nice decoration on the cake. But the whole thing really in basketball be totally about winning championships. And so I'm a big believer in that. If you heard it, my feeling is, why do you give guys extra credit for being on a championship team if they're lucky enough to be in a franchise that makes good decisions with personnel, and you have great teammates and you win a bunch of championships? Extra credit because you have more championships than somebody else who may have helped his team win a championship, and without him, they never would have won it. But the other team has all these great players on it. So I just never understood that.
Coach, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that I think the Hall of Fame should reward some of the assistant coaches, and also maybe what I call the 6 Men Award, or the glue guys that hold a team together, like a Bruce Bowen or a Robert Horry or someone like that.
Yes.
We don't give the guys that are the hustle guys, or the guys that have great leadership in the locker room, that hold a team together. We don't give them a lot of love. As Rick says, we only kiss the guys who win championships. But I think it's interesting that Del Harris has never won a championship. He's going in. I'm going in without a championship. Bobby Huggins is going in without an NCAA championship. So I think maybe it's changing a little bit.
That's fair. Coach, one player that you seem to be synonymous with for better or worse is a player on the Nuggets currently who's also a former Warrior, and he's actually putting in some great minutes in limited time for the Nuggets, and that's DeMarcus Cousins. How would you describe your relationship with him today? Like, you coached him with the Sacramento Kings. We see some back and forth here and there. You did a tweet recently where you kind of you basically told him that the 50 million in change he earned for Sacramento is a lot of money. And I think I agree with you. I think people take for granted the amount of money they're earning in the game today, and just the fact that they're playing in the NBA for a career. That is insane. I mean, only very few people have that luxury, and to take it for granted, I think is a little appalling. How would you describe your relationship with DeMarcus Cousins?
DeMarcus and I don't communicate. I mean, we've definitely been at each other's had odds against each other for a long time. Well, when I said the quote, I was standing up for the game of basketball. I was standing up for the coaches that tried their butts off to motivate him in a positive way to get him better. And to be honest with you, he got better, even though they didn't win a championship. With my year in Sacramento, he made All NBA. He made the All-Star team. Those are credible credentials in our game today. And so to kick the game and kick a franchise, and I love Sacramento. I want Sacramento to win so badly, it's unbelievable. But I didn't think it was a fair shot. And that's why I stood up for the game of basketball. I'm not angry at DeMarcus. DeMarcus had a good career. I know he's trying to win a championship. I know his injuries have been very difficult for him. I respect that. And I've always thought DeMarcus was somewhat misunderstood, but a lot of his actions create the misunderstanding. And I don't think he's ever got the understanding that he's got to settle down and handle frustration in the game better than he does. For the most part, he's a good teammate. He's not a bad practice player, and he's a very skilled big guy. But, his frustration that he brings to the game, the negative energy he's brought to the game, drives coaches crazy.
Yeah, I could sense that. I was about to say, I was going to ask you, what do you think Cousins, or why does Cousins push so many wrong buttons? Because he clearly has. It seems to be he has a lack of filter. Maybe I'm incorrect in saying that. Would you have a specific reason for what DeMarcus could do to kind of salvage his career, at least on a relationship level, so he's not constantly burning bridges? Because he's burned a lot of them.
Well, I don't know. I think he's done a really good job with Denver. He's accepted he's only going to play 10 to 15 minutes every game. He's a hell of an insurance policy if Jokic would get hurt. And he seems to be a team leader of their second unit. The way he and Bones get along, they kind of have an energy to them that most of the time is very positive. But he still gets too many technical fouls. He still gets thrown out of games he shouldn't get thrown out of. But, he's trying to be the tough man for the Nuggets, which is good. I like that. But I like smart, tough men. I don't like tough men that just do it to show off.
Rick, do you have any thoughts on DeMarcus Cousins?
Here's the thing. I do think that this is where George was talking about assistant coaches. I think a lot of have somebody that an assistant coach can establish a relationship with a player like that. The perfect example is DeMarcus Cousins got to be a better player when Clifford Ray was there for a short period of time. And Clifford has the ability to really connect with big men. The litany of what he's done in his career, where he's had big guys and what he's done to them and how much he's improved them, there's nobody that compares to him. And so you don't want to get rid of guys as assistant coaches if they can have a relationship with a guy like DeMarcus to keep him in line, talk to him all the time, try to guide him down the right path. And I think that's an important element when you have a player like that, to have an assistant coach who establishes that relationship with him and can change the dynamic.
Coach, did you ever have an assistant coach like that? Are there any assistant coaches that come to mind for you in your career that really stick out in terms of just helping you in your success?
I think I have the best assistant coach ever to coach in the NBA, and Tim Gergeridge. I brought Tim Gergeridge to Seattle with me in the early 90s. In the early 90s, I brought Tim into the NBA. He's been in since 1991. Tim Gergwich has been in the league almost every year. And I think he's well renowned around the league as one of the best assistant coaches ever. And I honestly think Tim Gergwich should be in the Hall of Fame. And there's no reason why a guy that's, been in so many playoff games, has won a championship on the Dallas Mavericks, and he's just a guru and a mentor for so many NBA coaches. He's constantly on the phone helping guys out. He loves the game. He loves the gym. And those guys should be recognized also.
Absolutely. Yeah, no disagreement there.
I'm George and Cyrus, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm here at my thing. I'm going to have to go, but it was a pleasure to talk to you again, George. Hopefully, and Big Bill will have our little luncheon together up at his place in Denver, and maybe I'll see you up there. Meanwhile, stay well, stay healthy, and God bless both of you.
Thanks, Rick. And Coach, I won't keep you long.
Yeah. See you guys.
Thanks, Rick. And you can follow Rick Barry on all social media platforms at Rick24Barry. And Coach, wrapping things up here. I know you got a really busy day. Let me get the right background here for you. There you go. And that's Hall of Famer George Karl. You can follow him on Twitter at Coach Karl22. Let's get some love to anything you'd like to promote, sir. And by the way, Rick Barry, you can follow him again on all social media platforms at Rick24Barry. You have this fantastic media venture. It's called Truth in Media. Anybody watching the show on YouTube can see the front of the website right there. And if you're listening on the podcast, you just go to the website's really easy. It says truthplusmedia.com. Please promote away. Talk about this media venture and anything else you would like the viewers and listeners to know, sir.
Well, I think the one thing we're trying to do is figure out, how to evolve what we love about the game of basketball and what we learned from the game of basketball and expound on that into social situations. My podcast, a lot of times it was on racism. A lot of times it was hiring African Americans. A lot of times, it was on the politics of our country. It just changes. It goes from place to place. We like situations like in Seattle. We have a podcast basically for the lovers of the Seattle Sonics. And it's a really successful one. My son did a podcast that was really, really good. So, we're always evolving into trying to find good storytelling, good, deep, soulful stories, and also stay relevant in today's world.
I love the format. I love how you've split this up into all sorts of different themes, just to kind of narrow down what someone wants to look for. This is fantastic. Are you done as a coach? Is there a possibility we might see you walking on the sidelines of the someday leading a group of young men?
I don't. That's a good question. I have a 17-year-old daughter. She goes away to college in September of this year, and I will be free to do whatever I really want to do. So I'm not ruling out coaching. I would coach. I know I'd coach two ways. If my son called me up and wanted me to be his assistant coach, if he got a head coaching job in the NBA, I would go.
Okay.
Or one of my ex-players or one of my mentors, one of my coaches that I'm mentoring a little bit would call me up and maybe ask me to be a consultant or an assistant coach. I don't think I want to be a head coach in the NBA. But in the same sense, I wouldn't mind maybe going to Europe or Australia or some other country where they play 1 or 2 games a week rather than 4 or 5 games a week. Where the schedule's a little bit easier, maybe a little shorter. So I'm not rolling it out, but I'm not saying I will either.
Have you heard any rumblings about Seattle? To me, it's long past time that the NBA expands to 32 teams. I think the league has shown the talent is there, the financial stability is there, and obviously Seattle is going to be one of those 2 teams. It's not official, but it's common sense would dictate it, and I think the support and the fan base is there. And have you heard anything? And if Seattle has a team, do you think they'd bring you back, like in some capacity?
Well, everything that I hear is very positive. Basically, I don't know when the league is going to decide on expansion. I've heard it might be early. I've heard in the next couple of years, but I've also heard 4 or 5 years. So I mean, I think we're all waiting for that domino to fall. Then we'll figure it out. I mean, so much of the hiring of who's going to be involved, I think is going to be probably by the president. And maybe the president is already there, but there's a good chance that the president has to be brought in first, and you got to go through the protocol of that hire. I think almost all the Sonics in my era would love to come back. I know Jamal Crawford would love to come back. I know Gary Payton wants to come back. I know Sean wants to be a part of it. I think Nate McMillan would probably want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of guys that are on that list, but we got to wait till the dominoes fall. And the first one would be, of course, the recognition that the league wants to expand to Seattle.
Exactly. And it's a step that needs to be taken. And you joined Hall of Famer Rick Barry and I on his show, the Rick Barry Show, a couple of years ago, and you talked about your appearance on The Last Dance. So I don't want to rehash that whole bit, but I will say this. You're the 6th winningest coach of all time. You have that Coach of the Year award. You've had wild success as a head coach in this game and as a player. So there's no surprise that you're inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I really think, in my humble opinion, you would have been a champion if an individual named Michael Jordan was not playing in this league at the same time. He's responsible for quite a few players not having rings. And it's just no fault of anyone, right? That was the era that you happen to have.
You have the Bill Russell era, and then you have the Michael Jordan era, and you maybe have the Kobe Bryant era. That there are a lot of guys that lost to those guys. I mean, I laugh all the time because, the Lakers and the Celtics have won so many championships that no one likes them that ever played great. I mean, someone asked me the other day, do you like the Celtics? And I go, well, I like the Celtics against Brooklyn because I think Brooklyn's messing with the game.
Yeah, yes.
I think what they tried to do this year drove me crazy. So I'm rooting for Boston against Brooklyn. But that doesn't happen very often.
We are so on the same page with that. I feel like if the basketball gods exist, they're frowning on that Brooklyn franchise for what they're doing there. I'm 100% with you. I absolutely agree. Last question. I'll let you go, sir. I cannot begin to thank you enough for all the time you spent with me today. Your predictions for this series and for the Warriors or Nuggets moving forward. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe they're the first team to come back from 3-0. I mean, I'm not predicting that, but what are your predictions, sir, moving forward?
I think Golden State will have I think tomorrow, Wednesday's game will be a tougher game than Golden State thinks it's going to be. But I think Golden State also has the pride and connection that they don't want this series to drag on. The quicker you can get it over with, the more rested you get, helps you play in the NBA Finals. And if you don't get that rest, sometimes you lose it because you're too fatigued to play in the NBA Finals. So I think Golden State understands all that. They have an NBA championship pedigree. They have a great coach. Their coaching staff as well. I think they've done a good job of manipulating the personality of this team. They're back on top, I think a little bit faster than I thought they would get. And I think they win in Wednesday. I think it'll be a closer game than you think it would be.
Fair.
But I think in some way that will be good for them. They'll learn how to win a tough game. And then they'll move on to get Minnesota or Memphis. That one could be difficult, but I think they'll win that too.
Who do you think comes out of that side? That series has been phenomenal in my eyes. What are you thinking there?
Well, I hate to say it, but you got two really talented young teams, and both of them have a little bit of immaturity to them that kind of drives me a little crazy.
I'm with you.
100%. I think a year or two from now, those two teams could be really great, but I don't think they're good. I don't think they're good enough to sustain what it takes to go to the next round. I think the more, whatever you want to call it, immaturity or lack of fundamental championship thoughts, they make too many mistakes. They may have too many breakdowns. Their emotions go up and down too much.
Yes.
So I think if I had to pick a winner, I'll probably lean towards Memphis because they have the home court. But I really think Minnesota is a team of the future. I really do.
I can understand that. And on a personal level, sir, you know, some of my earliest memories of watching basketball were your Warriors teams. You had Sleepy Floyd and Chris Mullin as your backcourt. It was one of the highlights of my life. I was playing CYO basketball and I just wanted to emulate them. And that Sleepy Floyd game where he put the 29 and a quarter, 39 and a half in the playoffs. You were the coach of that team, correct? Please tell me I'm right about that. Thank you. And
Mother's Day.
Well, I'm sorry.
It was Mother's Day.
That I did not know. That's a new tip. I was
Sunday
learning weird little
afternoon
things.
game, Mother's Day.
Incredible.
Game forever.
Of course, same. And I was like, I think 8 years old or 7 years old when that game happened. And Rick and I had Sleepy on the show back in December, and it was just the highlight of my day. I mean, it was just I don't know if you keep in touch with any of those old guys, but I'll never forget that. And so for me, you are a permanent part of Warriors lore, and you're welcome on the show anytime, sir. I cannot thank you enough for the time you took today. Thank you.
Cyrus, I really appreciate it. Blessings to you, and let's have some great basketball in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, sir. That is the Hall of Fame head coach, George Karl. Again, follow him on Twitter at Coach Karl22. Thank you, Coach, and for everyone, have a great day. Thank you.